was really fun when we first came here because it was kind of like, wow, there's so much here to work with, potentially to interact with, and specifically in the stairwell. As I was looking around, you know, all of the rooms, every room, every wall sort of had its own language already in it, and this one really started me thinking about how I could approach the gestures that were already here and the history that was already here, and got me really thinking about how I wanted to do that, and how I could layer and interact my marks with the existing marks and character that was here. Yeah, there was a lot of, it's heavier than the rest of the work, and the integration of materials in certain areas is definitely more interesting than in other areas, and I'm, you know, now that I'm having time to reflect on the work in the space as I didn't before, I'm noticing things that, things about it that work for me, and the material used and the mark used and how they can work together. I mean, this was definitely additive and reductive together, in a very heavy way that's kind of less delicate, I guess, than some of the other things that are going on in this room. But manipulating kind of the corner space, and then how this piece comes into an existing piece that I brought into the space. Yeah, there's a lot of drawing with the Dremel in these areas, and color coming through. The one thing I loved about this wall is the color really came through, the layers of color that had, you know, that these walls had existed at some point, adds the element of color that I don't generally achieve on my own. So it was a really, it was great to be able to see and to manipulate that a little bit. Yeah, that, as I toured the building and saw the other rooms that all faced this direction, all the rooms had an enormous amount of flowers or plant or foliage of some sort.
And you mean like on the other
yeah, on the other levels of the home, and so I felt like introducing, you know, understanding this space that formerly could have, would house those flowers because the light is so amazing in here. I wanted to reintroduce that into this space again, as, you know, understanding that that's what had probably existed here at one point. So definitely more organic nature up here. This was funny because these started when I first came here. I took a bunch of photos and I started thinking about the textures in the space and the forms that were in the space, and how I might use materials in order to visually talk about what is here. And so this was, you know, working from just those photos that I'd taken, and Nina had come to the studio, and we'd had a couple visits about how I was approaching the physicality of the sheetrock, and
right.
And sort of, I mean, I guess it's sort of like, you know, dreaming of the space.
When you engage with this site, you are sort of making your mark in a constructive act, but at the same time you're sort of eroding a little bit of what already exists here.
Yeah, this room is definitely very different. I think it's been brought up than the first room, and this to me was a little bit more traditional, and the approach with it, with, you know, dealing with this almost as a canvas or a sheet of paper. But all the imagery was kind of informed by buildings that were outside and organic material kind of coming up, and then these processes of reducing, taking off layers that reflected shapes and textures that were found in the brick wall,
and then
on the other side, yeah, and the molding. So the shape of the brick, but also that you know, the molding. You can see that it's been, it has an age, yeah, and you know, somebody was trying to do something with it, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't work, but being able to use that texture to kind of inform what I can achieve in these certain shapes in here was something that was that came. These were kind of more architectural and geometric. That, you know, this window out here, while I'm looking at this window outside, there's just buildings and city, and so it had, you know, those are all those shapes that exist in that landscape out there, and so that really definitely had an impact on how I was bringing that into the space, and that you know, that moved its way, you know, even the outside of this building is moving its way into the the interior, and addressing this space is not just what's in here, but also where this exists. Yeah, so this, you know, a blank wall in the space means I've got 48 hours left, and so yeah, so this is, you know, I first started, I didn't have much time to think about that. From the completion of this whole project space to the opening it was, you know, it happened.
You took on
It was
a lot.
yeah. And so to have this week to actually sit in here and understand how these things function or don't function, and how my approach with imagery or source material, all of those things, has worked on these walls. It was, you know, this became sort of a way to approach the marks that were made as people run by this area. And so understanding that it's when people brush up against this, or when I know that had been a table in here, and I feel like when things have been moved, or, you know, the ladder when it's been moved, these were the smudge marks, or the little scrapes that were made into it. And so I wanted to sort of bring that to, you know, bring more attention to that,
Right.
and make it more purposeful, rather than, you know, accidental. And also, you know, it is a gallery, and you know, those are the marks that happen, that accumulate with the movement that goes on in here. And so I, you know, starting to work from that as sort of this structure to continue to work on.
Right.
But, you know, also understanding, taking the time to step back and look at how it might be developing, is, you know, I can take a little bit more time with.
In terms of the marks that you make. So it
Yeah.
really is a site responsive drawing. So
Yeah.
it's like everything that you're seeing and experiencing within the space is helping to inform where you're going to go next with the mark and the drawing. So
Yeah.
it's sort of like a really organic process. Even if it seems structured, those structured elements are coming from sort of an intuitive response to what's happening around you.
Yeah. I approach it from the discipline of drawing. I
Okay.
don't, but I definitely have that interest in the dimensional, you know, the sculptural aspects of
Right.
what a drawing could possibly be. So I'm draw.
Right.
How is it working in this gallery as far as around town in the city of Boston? Is this a unique space in the way that you can work in it? Because we're trying to explain that to people, and I wondered if you could try to explain how it works differently here.
Oh, I mean, it's like a community, and it's a community in the most supportive way. And like, that wasn't sort of arbitrary, me saying that this building, like, Cassie's marks are physically being supported by the architecture, literally, but that the site itself, the space, the community that's here supports the art making and the artist. And that is incredible. And just the idea of it being a flexible space, even for somebody like me who wants to like work with somebody on a project, to just have that opportunity without sort of having to go through all the crazy, you know, politics and what have you, is really special and really amazing and important. And it offers great opportunities for people to see artists' work that might not have that opportunity. Like Kathy,
Yeah.
So we have to say it's amazing that he had that
Foresight.
foresight to think that this would happen.
Well, right, and just the notion of the architecture literally being so flexible and actually being
Yeah.
able to become part of the material that you're engaged with. Like, to do a project like this, even like a museum or gallery,
Doesn't
it
happen
doesn't
like
really
that.
happen like this.
So
You
how,
bring your stuff
how
in,
inspiring
and
were
that's
the
it.
ceilings?
Oh.
I was
was
just
just saying
noticing
that-
this over here, like this amazing, like piece that
Yeah.
looks like bark. It looks like bark. It's like so amazing.
Well, I think what I thought was funny about this
Yeah.
room is a lot of people approached
It
me
does,
asking
it's
if
like a
those were like, if I'd done some of this stuff up
Oh.
here, because it
Yeah.
became sort of
See,
this
she's
subversive
talking
thing, saying, you know, for
about
them
that piece, it
looking
looks
for my marks in non-traditional ways in this room, where I really dealt with it in more of a traditional, you know, just working on the walls. And so people were looking all around asking if, you know,
And I
if
think
some
that
of them-
blurring of the line,
Yeah,
like I
it's
said, like
exactly
where
what
the
it is.
mark,
Yeah.
where the mark
the entrance
ends
and
and the
exit.
building begins, or vice versa, becomes sort of a fluid, a fluid movement and conjoining of those two things, which even further supports this notion of being supported by and inspired by the building. Because when you can't visually distinguish, it becomes like a fluid relationship, which is really cool.
it.